So here's the a little bit of the anatomy lesson that I promised. For the most part, with your blade, the things that we're typically attacking are blood vessels. So your blood vessels in this context, we're attacking arteries and veins. Okay, your other blood vessels are capillaries, but you have capillaries everywhere, so it doesn't necessarily count. So arteries and veins, and then secondarily, the other things we're attacking muscles, tendons, and ligaments. Okay, we talked about this last night as we me, Matt, and Nate and abs over there. We were working out a little bit. So talked about the difference between mechanical compliance, pain compliance, things of that nature. Pain doesn't really exist in fighting. You cannot bank on a pain response with anybody because you don't know what the other person's pain tolerance is like. And that's naturally, or if they're on some kind of substance. Everybody's super strong when they're on cocaine or any other kind of drugs. So that's why we look for blood vessels and we look for mechanical. We look to create mechanical defects. Okay, so mechanical defects would be cutting muscles and tendons and ligaments, and then the anatomical stuff, the vessel attacks here. This is where we're talking about just basically depleting their body of oxygen through blood loss. Okay, so targets that the vessels we're talking about arteries and veins. Okay, arteries are probably the more important of the two. Both are incredibly important, but arteries in this particular context that we're talking about are the ones that are going to give us the most bang for our buck. Okay, 13% of your blood is in your arterial system. Where do arteries carry blood?
Away from the heart.
Away from the heart, right? So the blood that's getting carried away from the heart is oxygen rich. Okay, so that's taking the oxygen to all your tissues around your body, including your brain. Okay, your veins, 64% of your circulating blood is in your veins. Okay, the veins aren't under any kind of pressure. The arteries are. So when someone has a severed artery, it bleeds profusely and it spurts. Okay, so you use a lot of blood very, very quickly, particularly if your blood pressure, heart rate is elevated. Because if your heart rate's elevated, that means the blood's circulating through your system faster, which means there's more pressure, which means the blood exits the system faster. Okay? The veins aren't under any kind of pressure. Okay? If you nick a vein, it dribbles. Okay? But with that being said, if you cut a vein, that's just time that's just time that you're buying yourself. The person is losing fluid from their body. Okay? Arteries are the primary target, but it just so happens with the way the body is laid out, if you catch an artery, you'll likely catch a vein because they're most of the time adjacent to one another. The organs that we're talking about down here, the liver, at any given time, 25% of your total arterial blood, which is 13% of your entire blood in your system, is circulating through your liver. Okay? It's going there to be cleaned and processed, take all the nutrients out of it, to supply it to the rest of the body. So if you get your liver lacerated, it's going to bleed profusely, and you're not going to have a whole lot of time before those effects kind of take hold. And from what I'm told, it's very painful as well. But again, we're not worried about pain too much. But if we know if we put our knife somewhere, it's probably going to hurt, that's also a good thing to keep in mind, but we can't bank on it. And then the other one is the spleen. So the spleen is basically the blood bank for your body. Your spleen houses all of your excess red blood cells. Okay, and it's your red blood cells that carry the oxygen to all your tissues. So the red blood cells, when your body's under stress, under pressure, or if you're bleeding, your spleen goes to work and starts pumping those excess red blood cells out into the body to help keep everything working and functioning properly. So if we pop the spleen and then we immediately go at the neck, it's going to be a much faster time before that person is going to go unconscious from oxygen loss. Okay? So one of the main reasons why I talk about hitting the neck is because that's where we can bank on the fastest shutdown as possible with the knifing. Shooters aim center mass because if you destroy the heart, you're destroying the body's ability to pump blood and oxygen to all the surrounding tissues, and they go out. Okay? But with a 4-inch knife, we're not going to be able to get through it. Okay, because it's protected on the start. So we go at other targets that allow us to get there. So particularly talking about the targets of the neck, we've got the carotid artery and also the jugular veins that run parallel to the carotid arteries. So if we pop those, we're depleting the brain of oxygen, and what happens when the brain is depleted of oxygen? You go to sleep, right? It's like getting choked out, okay? That's why those are our primary targets. And then going down here, down the arms, we have the brachial artery, then we have the radial and ulnar arteries, and then we have a bunch of veins that go around there as well. As we start doing our defensive cutting with our blade, as somebody's trying to cut us, you guys familiar with the term defend the snake? Okay, traditional Filipino martial arts term. They look at the arm as a snake, and any weapon that's in the hand is a fang. If you can take the fang away from the snake really can't hurt you anymore. That's the logic behind it. And that's a vast majority of what we'll be looking at as we go on through the day. So as you're cutting down here, you're actually targeting the body's ability to make a tight fist. Okay, everybody go like this, make a tight fist. Take your left hand, go ahead and push on your forearm. Feel the tension. Okay, now open your hand. Feel it goes relaxed. Okay, make tension again. If I sever this, what happens? It relaxes and you drop whatever you had in your hand. Okay, so that's the main concept there. Additionally, we have those blood vessels in that area as well, which you will likely go ahead and cut as you're doing some of these motions. Okay, so like I said, that's kind of the gruesome stuff. You know, as we're talking about the reality of using a knife on somebody, but this is the main reason why I have you guys attacking the targets that we do. It's based off of what you can actually expect to get with a shorter knife and what's going to give you the most payoff in terms of shutting that person down. Okay, so we're talking a lot about fatal anatomy here. We'll also talk about non-fatal stuff as well, because, you know, not a big fan of, you know, just going out and thinking like, okay, well, you know, I got my knife in my pocket. If anything pops off, I'm just going to kill anybody who messes with me. That's kind of not a good headspace. Okay, so we'll talk about non-fatal stuff as well. But this is one of the reasons as well, as we start talking about the things that we talk about tomorrow, why I have you doing your empty hand defenses the way I do is because you need to be able to protect this stuff. Okay, because just as much as you can do this to somebody, they can also do it to you. Okay, so, all right, so the last one of the angles we're going to do is actually how we do these attacks to be the most fatal as possible. Okay, so we'll continue on with the thrusting, but now we're going to apply the thrust with a cut. Okay, so sometimes when I talk about this stuff, one of the things I like to say is every thrust is a cut, and every thrust becomes a cut, and every cut becomes a thrust. Meaning, if you look at the position of what the hand does with the weapon, if I make a cut, I'm in orientation to follow up with a thrust. If I make a thrust, boom, I should always reposition with a cut. And so that's what we're going to do now. So we'll go this way. As I come in with this angle 1 thrust into the side of the neck, I go in, I turn the hand over, and I cut across. Okay? And what that is effectively going to do is make sure I get all those vessels and I sever the vessels. So this is just, you know, advisory. This is the gruesome part. Okay? But I'm not saying that, you know, this is what you should do to people, but I teach it this way because I like you guys to know what is going to happen to you if this is done. Okay? Which this could hopefully reinforce that heel-toe technique. Okay? So, as I go into the side of the neck, and I'm in, I twist and I cut across. Okay? If your knife is nice and sharp, chances are, as this cut happens and you twist and you start to cut across, you're probably going to go deep enough to scrape the spine, depending on the length of your weapon. Okay? So that's the kind of depth that we're looking for here. Right now, we want to find his backbone. Okay? So in, twist, pull, cut across. The 2 is the same thing. I go in, I twist, I go across. Okay? The 3, open up. The 3 into that spleen. Boom, twist it and cut across. Okay? As you're cutting across here, like I said earlier, you're going to find the sternum eventually if you're high enough. Okay? You're also going to possibly, if you're low, you're going to find the intercostal the costal cartilage, because the last few ribs down here don't actually connect to the sternum. They connect to each other via a big line of cartilage that then connects to the sternum. Okay? So we're not looking to actually go like that. We're just looking to put it in, find that spleen, twist, and cut out back towards ourselves. So even if you do hit bone in here, you're just dragging it across the bone.
So is that notation going to crack the rib open too?
No. The ribs will move because your ribs flex and expand, but it's not going to break anything. Twist, go across. The liver on the angle 4, in, twist, go across. And as you're cutting across, you guys know this from your stick work, eventually along the arc of the strike, the weapon starts to come back to you. And so that's what's going to take care of the withdrawal. It just comes back to you. Okay? 5, we go in and we smack down. That's where I was talking about the muscles. Okay? So into the depth of your hand, push it down. Okay? 6, still to the eye. 7, still to the eye. That's an in and out. And high 5 is an in and out as well. Okay? So 1, thrust, twist, cut. 2, thrust, twist, cut. 3, thrust, twist, cut. 4, thrust, twist, cut. 5, in, down. 6, 7, high 5. Okay? Everybody got that? Give it a try.